All right, welcome to another Troubadour Reacts. My name is Kirk Barbera, and I am musically challenged, at least according to my high school band instructor. And I also run Troubadour.studio, where I give lectures on classic literature, drama, all kinds of artworks, classic arts. But the purpose of this channel, Troubadour Reacts, is to help give me a little bit more of an education and experience with modern contemporary music, where I think I'm woefully under knowledgeable. I know very little, and I'm trying to learn. So this is my reactions to these songs. And right now I am exploring the great lyricist Ren Gill, and we'll be watching and listening to his song Vincent's Tale Self-Portrait. Now I've already done Sunflower, a prologue. I also did the Jenny and Screech tales. So watch some of those other videos that I've done where I'm going through this whole corpus of his work. I have to say one quick thing before we get started. Somehow I was rewatching the video of what I did with Sunflowers, and I mentioned all these great classical works, which is what I do. I have not seen these lyrics. I have not seen this music video. But afterwards, I'll pause and then I'll do some commentary for those interested. And I noticed in listening to it, like, I did not mention Vincent van Gogh. Okay, so I'm just going to say that. I'll just leave that one right there. Okay, so let's get into the reaction of Ren Gill's Vincent's Tale Self-Portrait. Okay, this is from Sunflower, right? This is, I think, the ending. Or maybe that was like a prelude, like just showing us a little clip from this. So I don't know if I should associate them directly. I don't know. We'll see. I love this music though. It's old-timey music. It's like the 30s or something. Now, they always do great with the cinematography. Ooh, blood spatters. Ooh. We're in for it. That's the kind of bar I would go to. For sure. I like that. The druid's head. That's so cool. This looks like a set. Is this a real place? Like, can we visit it? Let's go. Who's ready? Who wants a pint? I want a pint. Oh. Oh, he's got such great physicality. Man. I was actually worried he was going to fall. Like, for a second, I was like, oh, shit. Ooh, I know this riff. Yeah, we do.
Come on, let's have it, you miserable prick. I will do what I want. I will drink till I'm sick to my stomach. I'm sick of the same boring songs. I am sick of these pavements I find myself on. Great Britain, I hate you. I'll say that with pride. It's my right to be violent when you fed me lies.
Ooh, all kind of rebellion songs and poems.
I'm a rotter,
coming to mind.
menace when I want to be.
That's what this is.
I'll work for that right because nothing comes free. I have slaved all my life in the dull 9 to 5. I just rinse and repeat while I'm barely alive. Great Britain, I loathe you with murderous glee. I will do to this country what you've done to me.
Oh, this is rebellion, baby.
Destroy.
Oh.
I want to tear apart these buildings from the cinder blocks they stand. Leave this town in dust and rubble. Make some trouble with my hands. I won't lie, I'm fucking wasted. But I wasted all my youth, and I've stayed so damn complacent. Getting wasted is my truth. So my style of self-expression is a fist into the gut. It's throwing up upon these pavements. Shut your fucking mouth, you slut. Banished angel, I am Lucifer. Might reign like Genghis Khan. Soon you will all know my name. I am the storm after the calm. I'm the victim of the victim list. The pill that makes you sick. I am chaos incarnate. Let's fucking have it then, you prick. Now the rules of the street fight are simple. It's pretty much anything goes. Keeping the street pretty firm on your feet. It pays to be sweet on your toes. And fools they have fallen for clumsy mistakes. Late to react, cop the fist to the face. Now the rules of the street fight are simple. Break that little prick's nose. Throw a punch, you swallow it, follow it, grab the collar, quick hollow tip like karate kick, martial art master, spark a bitch, park a fist on the landing strip, carnage, it finds the cartilage, karma serve like a carbonated cola on the crucifix, kill. Vincent wanna kill, who blood gets spilled, move double that rude boy, kill or be killed. Do it for the fun, blood, do it for the thrill. Blue lights, boy, run, blue lights, boy, chill.
Oh, jeez. Man. Love the cinematography. This is great. Men's meeting house. Is this a real place? This has to be a real place. I'm silly. I'm sorry.
The devil's soul, a seed in anthem. Vincent was shaken, run from the law, hide from the bacon, crouch on the floor. The cook to omit him, hate the wolf spits on him, rapes him, hits him, kicks him when he's down, and that shapes him. He hears the sound of a copper, hot upon his tail proper. Vincent off his rocker. Bothered by the lie the Britons sold him, what a shocker. Where greedy eat the poor, a holy war, the chosen prosper. But some were never chosen, they stay frozen in the locker. Destined to survive in 9 to 5 and watch the clock, but don't think about reality, my little happy shopper. A brand new show on Netflix to distract you from the horror. And swallow all your morals for a retweet or a follow. And shadow ban the problem man, a soul sold for $1. And keep the fight amongst yourself, don't think about the squalor. The systems don't impose it or the rules that we all honour. And fuck it, Vincent cooked to boiling point, he's cannon fodder. So what's the use in running, he's already in the locker. He's careless with his actions now, a clumsy motherfucker. He turned to face his fate, cause fate's a bitch and none will stop her. Richard was an officer who stood at 6'3". Was his first day back at work after a time of absent leave. Working London on the night shift, what he didn't think he'd see was our boy with a guitar, bruised and battered on his knees. But Richard lived in caution now, tormented by his past. Not so quick to find a trigger, not so fast. But Richard was a righteous man who lived inside the law. So he leapt upon poor Vincent and he cuffed him to the floor.
Oh man, I am speechless. I mean, the lyrics are always amazing. I just felt like there's more. So obviously there's more tales to come. So that was just one section of him coming drunkenly out of a bar. Oh, so this is really cool. So when he writes like not individual, like he writes like an album, right? So that, I think that's how he thinks and how he creates, Ren that is. And so, yeah, my first just inclination is this story, and I'm trying to connect it to the sunflowers, where he was watching someone, a character was watching the screen, and I guess it was that same character who was later at a bar, paid his credit card, left drunkenly, got angry, and like took a guitar, got in a fight with a guy who was protecting the honor of his girlfriend, killed or stabbed that person, and then this young officer, or not, this officer takes down Vincent, and that's that self-portrait moment. And then we're going to get Vincent's tale next. So that wasn't, or another Vincent's tales. And that was just, prologue. This is like the intro of that. Wow. So there's a lot to it. So what I like to do is I like to take a moment. I want to go through the lyrics. I'm going to listen to the song a couple more times, and then I'll give some kind of more analysis, give you some more things to explore in terms of poetry, drama, maybe some paintings, things of that nature. All right, I'm back. And wow. So what I'm going to do this time, and hopefully I'm not going to just repeat myself over and over again with these other stories after this, but I actually spent a little bit of time with his lyrics. I listened to the song a couple times, and I decided to show 4 classic paintings to coincide with sections of his song that also go with other classical works that I'm aware of, because there is a lot that Ren really seems to tap into this current, this emotional, intellectual current that's been around for hundreds of years. And he's a great embodiment. I don't know if there's a better embodiment of this kind of, I don't have a word for it quite yet, a certain kind of modern romanticism, but the darker side of romanticism, which we're going to talk about. Not the chivalry is good and everything's wonderful idealism, but the dark underbelly. I've already talked about William Blake, and here's a little quiz. I'll tell you the answer later, but what Russian character, this is a character in a Russian story, said the following line: "I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man, an unattractive man. I believe my liver is diseased." I'll give you that to sit with as we go through the lyrics. What I said when I was listening to it and watching this for the first time in my reaction was that this was a rebellion song. And that's true, I think, but it's more than that. It really represents the kind of collapse of identity that has accepted the worldview that has been imposed on him. And especially him, Ren in this case, and I think the character as well, is Welsh. And there's a long history of kind of rebellious songs. Dylan Thomas is a great example of a great poet who's done this kind of thing. There's a long history of, Welsh and their relationship with Great Britain and how great it is to them, which, lots of exploitations, lots of actual military conflicts, things of that nature. And I feel a lot of that in the story, even if you're not aware of that context. You as a watcher, as an American, for instance, who maybe is ignorant of all these hundreds of years of exploration, Ren is, as a great artist, is phenomenal at having you feel a lot of this anger and angst and the collapse of an identity and the rage that sits under that. I'm not going to read the whole poem. I was going to say poem, the whole song, but there's a couple things I wanted to point out. So just in the first section, when he starts fighting with the guy, I'm sick to my stomach. I'm sick of the same boring songs. I'm sick of these pavements I find myself on in Great Britain, and then I hate you. And then I'm a rotter, a menace when I want to be, and I've worked for that right because nothing comes free. I've slaved all my life in a dull 9 to 5. That kind of melancholy. Let me read you something here. See if anybody recognizes this one. I'll just give you the hint that it's across the pond. And there's very similar feelings. It starts, "Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse, and nothing particular to interest me on shore. I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hippos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off. Then I account it high time to get to the sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball. With a philosophical flourish, Cato, who killed himself, throws himself upon his sword. I quietly take to the ship. There is nothing surprising in this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree sometime or other cherish very nearly the same feelings toward the ocean with me. That is the opening lines of Moby-Dick by Herman Melville. And Ishmael feels very much like Wren's character, Vincent, except Vincent has gone a step farther. So Vincent doesn't seem to have the escape of the sea available to him, right? That's what Ishmael has. Ishmael is going to, right? He says, this is my substitute for pistol and ball. Go to the ocean, give up everything. Pistol and ball meaning to shoot himself. Pausing before coffin hearses, bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet. Also the kind of violence he feels, stepping off the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, just kind of going about and just causing chaos. That's what Ishmael feels at the beginning of Moby-Dick. I find that really, really interesting in connection to Wren and how Wren often feels in many of his songs. The thing that I wanted to bring up in a visual here, and might sound kind of weird, but give me a moment, is a painting and a painter that has been fascinating me a little bit since I had, actually about a year and a half ago or so, when I reread Moby-Dick with a group of friends, and we did a reading group, and it was a really pivotal moment for me in understanding these other kinds of literature like Moby-Dick, which is a kind of confusing story in some ways, at least at first. And this painter, J.M.W. Turner, is very much aligned, I think, with some of the emotional, stylistic approaches of that time. And it's often been compared to Moby-Dick and vice versa. And I see some of this, not the sea conversation in this poem from Wren, or this song from Wren Gill, but I think there's something about the raw emotion. This is not, the slave ship. This is not a story being told here in, direct factual methods. It's not showing you everything in the clearest ways. It is showing you in very stark emotional experiences. You see this ship in the background and it's almost overtaken by the waves. It looks like the ship is blended into the ocean. And Wren says some of the stuff about his character, like, I am the storm kind of idea. And it's like, that's what you're living in. And it feels like the ocean and the sky and the sun is all one grand natural landscape, and man is just trying to experience through it. Now, this is depicting a moment of great, great, great horror. When in this storm, in order to try to save the ship, it's called the slave ship. So look at the hands, the colors of the hands that are in the ocean. It's a little hard to see sometimes in a digital copy, but you could see that they are black hands, basically. These are the slaves that have been, looks like with chains on them sometimes, dropped into the ocean in order to loosen the weight and try to save the ship. I'm not going to talk about the horror of that because it's pretty obvious, but what I think is interesting for Wren is the style that it really brings to heart for me. So Turner is not asking in his story, in the painting, what happened. It's not like a historical explanation of a specific event in history. He's asking, what did it feel like while it was happening? And this kind of over-sensory rawness of it, putting it in this way where the sun, like the colors are so stark, they clash together in a very interesting way that is almost, feels nauseating. I think what Turner does that Wren is also doing in a lot of his work, but especially in this one, is he's showing commerce becoming murder, order becoming chaos, law becomes weather or the storm. So in other words, systems collapse into nature. And Wren has these kinds of references of building or tearing back down to its original source. And I think that's really relevant to the Great Britain idea, the empire. That's what JMW Turner is also showing, is the kind of the empire is responsible for this kind of behavior. The going out in the ocean to sell human beings. There's a storm that you cannot contend with, so you just throw them overboard, human beings. So Turner doesn't paint rebellion against civilization. Neither does Wren. It's not a rebellion exactly. That's what I said when I reacted to it. He paints what civilization turns into when its logic is pushed to the extreme. Wren's Vincent isn't rebelling. He's the storm. He's the storm the system accidentally made. He's the byproduct. Turner kind of blurs ships into storms. Wren blurs work and drinking and rage and identity into a single violent motion. Both of them show us what happens when structures dissolve under pressure. And I think that's part of it. I see a lot of that in Melville as well. The difference is that in Melville, there is an escape valve in a sense. It's the sea. But of course, then he gets under the tyrannical, monomaniacal power of Captain Ahab. So he's now stuck with this monster at sea. Okay, let's move on to the next section. So in the next section, Wren talks about wanting to tear apart these buildings. From these cinder blocks they stand, leave this town in dust and rubble. I mean, this is a real desire to burn and to take down and to conquer, but not for the sake of conquering. It's like Daenerys in Game of Thrones. She wants to break the wheel, but she ends up wanting to burn everything to the ground. Wren talks about he wants to make some trouble with his hands, or Vincent, I should say. He wasted his youth, so I stayed so damn complacent. Getting wasted is my truth. So there's this idea of him wasted. He's, my style, like he's kind of lost himself. And then this is really interesting. So my style of self-expression is a fist into the gut. It's throwing up upon those pavements. Shut your effing mouth, you slut. And then that's when he's fighting he starts a fight with that couple. And then he says, I am Lucifer, my reign like Genghis Khan. Soon you will all know my name. I'm the storm after the calm. So, at Troubadour.studio, I have a course where I've gone through Milton's Paradise Lost. I think it's a great work that is not read very much today, and it should be. So let me read a quick little couple lines from that. And I think it's very reminiscent, or Wren is reminiscent of this. I mean, the famous one that I think is important is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. I think that's somewhat the feeling that Vincent has here. And in Paradise Lost, there's a line, what though the field be lost? All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and courage never to submit or yield. And what is else not to be overcome? That glory never shall his wrath or might exhort from me, to bow and sue for grace with suppliant knee, and defy his power, who from the terror of his form so late doubted his empire. That were low indeed. So Satan doesn't destroy because he's strong. He destroys because it's all that's left for him. Satan is up against God. He's up against the undestructible power of the universe. And yet he's going to do it. That's the rebellion. And rebellion's part of the culture. When you think about, how do you go up against, if I'm in America, how do you fight against the American military? I mean, the American military hasn't been doing great lately, but only because they're unwilling to use their power. If you look at what they're capable of, they are unconquerable, unstoppable. So how do Americans stop them? That's what we have to figure out in America. And I think it's the same thing for a Welshman. How does a Welshman stop Great Britain and the power? How does one man or a couple like him who are just kind of bursting out at the seams, and they are the forgotten ones, the forgotten men and women of culture, how do they fight back? And they're going to lose. That's the issue, is like Satan doesn't win. And we know that from the beginning of the story. And it's the same thing with Vincent. Vincent cannot win. I really like that line from Wren. My style of self-expression is a fist into the gut. That's all he could do. It's just punch punch you in the gut, and then, he's going to be done for. A painting to go along with this section I thought was interesting is Paul, The Fall of the Damned. Just the thing that made me think of this was just all the bodies. You cannot tell where will and the impact ends. You can't, it's just bodies falling. And I think to me, that's what Vincent's psychological state is. That's what he represents, is this kind of continual fall. There's a storm after the calm, Ren says. And I think the Rubens' is a vortex composition feels like that. It feels, again, like the J.M.W. Turner, it feels like the bodies have turned into a kind of metaphysical storm in the whole universe. It's chaos incarnate, banished angel. The stanza, as I've said, is not rebellion. It's a kind of self-mythologizing after defeat. It's what a defeated person says. So Ren's character, and I see this a lot, is not the man who's, at the forefront of the charge, like what is it, Marius and Les Miserables. He's not that character that's going to go toward the front of the picket line and go to the front and fight. He's the man in the back who's just been crushed by the boot of the empire, but he's creating this kind of mythology about it. Milton understood that the most dangerous moment isn't when someone believes they're right. It's when they believe destruction is the only way left to preserve a self. Ren's Vincent isn't claiming moral authority here at all. He is claiming the opposite about himself. He recognizes this about himself. He's claiming narrative authority. If he must be ruined, he'll be legendary. And it just occurred to me as I was saying this, there's a moment in Scarface when at the very end or toward the end, when Al Pacino's character is sitting with his wife and his longtime friend, the character Scarface, and they're at an elegant dinner. He's made it using drugs and other things to get to this level. And he's completely wasted. His wife finally has had it with him, so she leaves him because he insults her. And Al Pacino has this amazing monologue where he walks around talking to the people in the rich people in this place.
You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. So, what'll I make you? Good? You're not good. You just know how to hide. So say good night to the bad guy.
And I think that's what Vincent sees himself as. He sees himself as the bad guy. And this is that psychology of seeing yourself as that. He doesn't have a political agenda. He's not trying to go after. This is the tragedy of a person who's crushed in this way. So this next section, I thought was really well choreographed. It was stylized, and it wasn't like going for hyper violence, but it was about violence. It was about street fights. And as the story shows, street fights can often lead to death or serious injury. And part of it's because you're just not in a controlled environment. So even if you hit somebody, if you hit somebody in the wrong way, you could knock them out. And if they hit their head on the concrete a certain way, they could die. And this happens all the time. Someone falls unconscious, hit their head, and they're dead. And then you're down for murder, right? Like, that's one of the biggest reasons why you should avoid a fight, for one. One of the things that I thought was interesting that I'll just point out, and we'll move on to the ending here, is it made me think of the Iliad, which, by the way, I have a translation. Go to troubadour.studio/Iliad, get yourself a copy, and you can also get some courses. Come join me for the Odyssey course, and there's a discount right here. You can get some discount for watching this video. But in the Iliad, what a lot of people forget or don't know is that there's a lot of brutality in it. And there's a lot of brutal killing, but there's also a kind of ritualized way of fighting. And there's certain styles and thoughts about the fighting. I'll just read a couple lines here from the Iliad. But a lot of times in the Iliad, there's a taunting of two warriors, and then the fighting, and then the consequences, which I think is what you see in Vincent's tale. Here's the Iliad. Thus having spoken, glorious Hector made his charge, eager to fight. Achilles too rushed forward, heart filled with savage fury. He lifted his well-wrought shield before his chest and shook the shining helmet, four-horned with its crest of horsehair nodding terribly. I'll skip a couple stanzas when they finish the fight. There Achilles drove the spear as Hector charged him, and the point went clean through the soft flesh of the neck, and Hector fell in the dust. So another painting of this moment in this era, this idea is another Peter Paul Rubens, Achilles versus Hector. And you could see the full focus of this one-on-one combat, Vincent tale at this moment. There's a kind of anything can happen feeling that happens in these stories, and I think he captures that. Now, in the final revelation of the story, we have Vincent kind of running away after he stabbed that guy, shaken, hide from the bacon, crouch on the floor. The call to war made him hate the world. The world spits on him, rapes him, hits him, kicks him when he's down, and that shapes him. And that shapes him. That's what I've been saying about this whole time. Bothered by the lie that Britain sold him, what a shocker, where greedy eat the poor, a holy war, the chosen prosper. So what I think I hear him saying a lot of this throughout this whole story is this idea of being the man who's aware of the kind of systems that are crunching him and feels like there's still no escape. So it's like he's Neo who knows about the Matrix but cannot get out of it in a way. Now, the story that came to mind for a lot of this was Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, who's not a rebel hero. That's when I really started thinking, okay, Vincent is not a rebel hero or a rebel even. Even though he has rebellious feelings, he's just lashing out in a way. But the underground man in Dostoevsky is a man who sees through the system. He hates it for all the lies. There's also Holden Caulfield, it brings to mind, from Catcher in the Rye. And that's part of what he sees. He sees all these, he calls everyone a jerk and stupid, and he sees through all of them, or thinks he does. And he hates himself, all these characters, Notes from Underground, I think Vincent, and all. He hates himself for being unable to escape it, but he weaponizes the spite as a last form of freedom. That's what it means. This is all that's left for me. I can't, pursue a job correctly. I get bored and, lose interest, and I just hate my life, and I'd rather be dead than be in this job. That's a real feeling. A lot of people feel that. Like, I feel that sometimes at a 9-to-5 job. It's just a brain numbing experience. You're like, why am I here? I'm wasting my life for a couple bucks and a couple hours on the weekend. It's just not worth it. I'd rather be dead. And some people would. And like, what do you do with that in a society? You just like incarcerate everybody. And, there's a lot of people like that. It weaponizes spites. Like I said, this is what I think Vincent's really getting at in this, at least in this story. So I read at the beginning, I think this really sums up the feeling, the psychological feeling that Vincent feels. I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man, an unattractive man. I believe my liver is diseased. And notice how Melville said similar things. They're actually writing around the same era. He says, whenever it is a damp, dreary November in my soul, whenever my hippos get such an upper hand of me, like hippos as in his, I think it's supposed to be like hypochondriac, his melancholy, basically, I think is what that really means. So he, in Notes from an Underground, he says, I am well educated enough not to be superstitious, but I am superstitious. I refuse medical treatment out of spite. That feels like something Vincent might say or do. My liver is bad, well, let it get worse. Dostoevsky gives us the prototype of the self-aware, self-destructive man. It's basically, I know this is killing me, I'm going to do it anyway. Because choosing harm proves I still choose. I still have free will. I can still act. That's underground logic. The system, That's the above ground, the lie, consciousness. That's the consciousness of the world that we live in today. That's the curse. Dostoevsky later reveals one of the more devastating lines in his canon. I swear to you, gentlemen, that to be overly conscious is a sickness, a real thorough sickness. And now look at what Wren says. Bothered by the lie that Britain sold him. Don't think about reality, my little happy shopper. A brand new show on Netflix to distract you from the horror. I think that's what he's saying. It's the kind of Matrix idea of taking the blue pill versus the red pill and not learning the truth of the system that you're born into and all these values that you've been imposed on you that aren't actually good for you, according to Vincent. And the system depends on these distractions. It depends on you watching me for this long. Thank you for being here, though. Hopefully you're learning something too. Consciousness and kind of knowledge isolates you from other people rather than saving you. Dostoevsky really understood that the real punishment isn't oppression. It's seeing through it and realizing you still can't escape. That's Orwell. You see that all the time. It's that you're trapped in silver bars, behind silver bars, and you cannot get out. That's the horror. I've made this connection before, but I think it's useful. The Black Mirror connection with Wren. I see similar sense of life, a similar kind of moral outlook where you are often trapped in this world. Sometimes your consciousness is trapped in this technological world, and there's really no escape. And that's kind of the feeling that I think he has. And I just want to show this painting that came to mind. This will be the final painting by Edgar Degas. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I just think it's really representative of this feeling. I mean, look at this is the absinthe drinker, or drinking absinthe in a cafe painting. When I see this painting, this is the feeling that I think Vincent had at the beginning of the story, right? When he's drinking, this is what he's like. And I like in the painting how they're together, but they're really not. They're really not connected. They're both very miserably unhappy. And it's just a tool, absinthe is, alcohol, to get them away from reality. So what I find so powerful about this whole Vincent sequence is that it follows a very old arc in a very new way. It begins where Melville begins, with a man sick of the shore, sick of repetition, sick of a life that feels smaller every day. And that restlessness turns into defiance, and defiance turns into myth, like Milton's fallen angel, convincing himself that destruction is the last proof of freedom. Then, like Homer, the violence, which is typical of all kinds of stories through our lives, becomes almost technical. It stops being an emotional and starts being almost procedural. Timing and bodies and consequences. Once you reach that point, the tragedy is already done, and it's there, it's inevitable. And next, I really saw Dostoevsky, who knew and understood this. I think he was the first modern psychologist to see this kind of experience, and that the industrial world brings about. It's a part of the industrial world. The modern world doesn't crush you with gods or monsters like the ancient or even the medieval world. It lets you see the lie clearly and then leaves you nowhere to go. There's no escaping the American or British empires unless you can escape from the earth. There's just no escaping it. Consciousness becomes a kind of curse and a feeling of knowing about this type of stuff and just not being able to do anything about it because it's an unstoppable monster. Spite then becomes a form of agency. To spite and to feel rage becomes, that replaces hope. Vincent is not a hero, of course, and he isn't really a villain. He's a man who understands too much and has no language except damage. And he represents many, many people in the world today. I think the most unsettling thing about Wren and what he shows us is that this isn't an extraordinary story at all. It's what happens when a system teaches people to survive, but forgets to teach them how to live. And I think that is the core of it for me. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that this time. I really got a lot out of that personally exploring this story. I'm really excited to explore further into the Vincent tale and saga. So see you next time.